Well, it is my pleasure to welcome you along to a new themed week here on Property Tribes. It's called Investment Fundamentals Week, and who better to join me than Graham Rowan, investment consultant. And Graham, so great to have your input for this week. You're going to be here the whole week, and actually I have to thank you for coming up with our topics. And I think, a good place to start is to say that to build a solid investment portfolio, whichever entity you're building that in, whether it be property or shares, you've got to get the fundamentals in place, and that's really what this week is all about, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm delighted to be here, Vanessa, and I think it's one of the reasons I run the Investor Club myself, is to try and help people to put some kind of plan and structure together for how they're going to build their wealth and how they're going to protect their wealth. Because let's be honest, you don't learn this stuff in school or university. They don't teach it in the workplace. And despite loads and loads of new regulations all the time, you never hear anyone from government or the FCA saying, hey, let's do something about financial education. So, you've got to do it yourself.
Absolutely. Now, the starting point for this week is actually your story, because that's really going to guide the week of how you became, I guess, financially aware and, worked yourself towards your own financial freedom. So perhaps if we could start off by saying, give us your backstory and how it triggered that desire to start taking responsibility for your financial future.
Yeah, certainly. I guess people just need to get a box of Kleenex ready so that when I get to the appropriate point, they're prepared. But for me, I had a great job in the corporate sector. I was a director of a big American company called Texas Instruments, and we were selling multi-million-dollar billing systems to telecoms companies all around the world. So I'd be jetting off all over the place. And the good news is I was making a lot of money, but I really didn't have the time or, frankly, the inclination to manage it from a sort of investment viewpoint. So one of my colleagues said, why don't you get yourself a professional wealth manager like I have? So I thought, seems like a good idea. So I went and met them. They came up with this fancy plan that said my freedom figure was £2.4 million, and this is how they were going to get me there. And they put my life savings into something called the NASDAQ, which I have to say at the time seemed like a great idea, because every morning I would wake up $2,000 or $3,000 richer than when I went to bed the night before. And every June I'd go along for my annual valuation with these guys, and the figures just went up and up and up. Then we got to June 2000, and you might recall we were all very pleased that planes didn't fall out the sky and computer systems didn't crash. But the NASDAQ had gone down about 10%. So I said, hey guys, should we take some money off the table and do something else? And they said, don't be such a wimp. Can't you recognize a minor correction in a raging bull market when you see one? We're staying in. So I said, okay, you know best. I went away to my busy lifestyle again, came back in June of 2001, and it had crashed and burned, and they'd lost me £151,600 in 18 months.
Ouch.
Ouch. And then they take me into a little side room and say, unfortunately, Mr. Rowan, these losses take your net worth below the level at which we look after clients, so I'm afraid we're going to have to let you go. So I was fired by my own wealth manager because of the losses they had made on my portfolio. So, I was angry, I was confused, I was embarrassed. I had to go and tell my wife, Daphne, that we'd lost a huge chunk of our life savings. And when I kind of reflected and processed it a bit, I thought, it's easy to be angry with those guys, but in truth, it was my fault, because I hadn't just delegated my wealth management to these guys, I had abdicated it and just gone off on my merry way. And the lesson I learned expensively and painfully was that nobody else cares about your financial future. You are not top of their agenda. I don't care how smart they are, how many advisors you've got, accountants, IFAs, none of them have got you at the top of their agenda. The only person that has you at the top of their agenda is staring back at you in the bathroom mirror each day. And the biggest message I need to get across to people is that no one else cares. You've got to take ownership. Even if you have a team around you, you've got to be the orchestra leader.
Absolutely. As we always say on Property Tribe, similar to yourself, the best person to look after your money is the person that you see in the mirror every morning, as you said. And I guess what this week is all about then, is, Graham, is that you had to go through that horrendous financial pain to have this wake-up call. And really, we're now giving the wake-up call using, I guess, your hindsight for other people's foresight.
Well, I hope so. I think the hard part is that, for me, I'd gone through the pain, then it became an emotional decision, not just a logical one. I was angry with myself. And I think what I want to try and convey to people is that, if you're not where you want to be at this stage in your life, don't look for other scapegoats. Don't blame the government. Don't blame the weather or the economy. It's down to you. You've got to take ownership. And if you can do that without incurring the sort of losses and the pain I had to, because you're watching this on Property Tribes, that's great. You're so far ahead of where I was, and you can avoid the pain and the grief and the cost that I had to go through.
Absolutely, and the sooner that people start to take responsibility for their own financial situation, then they've got a longer time to actually enjoy the benefits.
Well, that's right. I mean, what we're going to go through in the rest of this week is the specifics of how you go about this. But I think it's important to just emphasize that there has to be this decision. It's a little bit like you hear people saying about wanting to lose weight or something. They're always full of good intentions. But unless you really, really, really feel it and you want it and you've got a strong reason why you want to make this happen, you're going to just let it all slide and life gets in the way. You'll be too busy doing A, B, and C. So my plea to people watching us is to really sort of look in the mirror, make an emotional decision that you're going to take ownership, and then you will take action on the stuff we'll cover in the rest of the week.
I think it's really about making a commitment to yourself and to becoming educated, which indeed is the topic of our next video, and then just taking sustained and intelligent action on a regular basis. And that's really how people are going to build a kind of solid foundation for their future wealth.
No, absolutely. It puts me in mind of one of my favourite sort of mentors was the late Jim Rohn, and
Wonderful guy.
One of the things he used to say was that the difference between success and failure is small decisions repeated each day, and if you make the right decisions over a period of time, you'll see a phenomenal result. If you make the wrong decisions over a period of time, you'll get a very different outcome. So it's really all about just those little things you do every day that are furthering your whole process towards financial independence. And once you take that decision and you start doing these little steps day in, day out for weeks, months and years, you'll be amazed at how you can transform your financial circumstances.
And indeed, people do have to take a long-term view. There's not really any get-rich-quick unless you win the lottery or something of that nature. So people have to have a very long event horizon.
Yeah, I think unless you're going to marry it, divorce it, or inherit it, then you've got to go about creating it, and it's going to take a long time. But I tell you what, once you start the process, you'll see some results quite quickly, and I always tell people to celebrate those little results. It might be the first £1,000 that you save or something, but just celebrate those baby steps along the way, and they become habits. And once they become habits, then you're on the road, you're on the journey, and the rest will start to happen. And even if you make the occasional mistake within that context of owning your financial future and taking steps every day, it doesn't matter. You will get there.
Indeed. It really is a case of kind of like almost like a switch being flicked, where somebody just has to have that realization that they now to take responsibility and to start moving forward, and almost that kind of switch flicking on is the most important part, and then you're away.
That's right, and then that just gets reinforced with all the other actions and all the other topics we're going to cover for the rest of the week.
Well, I hope that has whet your appetite for the upcoming week of content that we are hosting in association with Graham Rowan of Elite Investor Club. We've got lots more really great stuff to come. It's going to delve deeper and deeper into this topic of investment fundamentals. And I guess, Graham, it doesn't matter what level of knowledge people have already, whether they're an absolute beginner or somebody very experienced, we hope there's going to be something for them within the week.
No, absolutely, and I think the fundamentals, as the name implies, are always true. And so it doesn't matter where you are on the journey, it really helps and it really pays to take a fresh look. And we all have our biases. Some people are only into property, some are only into the stock market. I want to try and broaden people's thinking a bit, because if you want real firm foundations for your wealth, you've got to understand the whole marketplace, all the opportunities that are open to you, and you've got to understand how you're going to build wealth across a whole range of different assets.
Absolutely. So that's what we're going to be looking at for the rest of the week. If you're watching this video on YouTube, I invite you to hit the subscribe button. And if you want to join our conversation and also where Graham will be interacting, please click across to propertytribes.com. But stay tuned as Investment Fundamental Week continues.